Shabbat Shalom. Purim came early to Temple Emanu-El this year. Because the 15th of Adar falls during many of the city schools' spring breaks, last weekend our religious school celebrated with food and fun, reading from the Megillah, and perhaps most excitedly, wearing costumes. Everyone was invited to be whoever they wanted to be for those few hours. This year, our theme was movies. Here is a picture of several of the clergy dressed as movie characters. You might not recognize that two of them are up on the bima now. At the end is Isabel Robin from our religious school staff as Tinkerbell. Then that's me as Hermione from Harry Potter. Our rabbinic intern Emma Dubin as a very convincing Willy Wonka. Cantor Glasman as Captain Hook. And Cantor Anderson and Rabbi Davidson as Barbie and Ken. Our Department of Lifelong Learning, which runs the religious school, decided to all dress as characters from the same movie. Here they are as characters in Pixar's animated hit Inside Out. It tells the story of 11-year-old Riley and the emotions that live inside her brain. Here they are in their costumes. We see the flaming head on your left of anger, then disgust wearing a look of scorn. In the center is fear. Then we have a very vivacious joy, and at the end, sorrow. I am always in awe of this team, but I found it so deeply moving that they chose to highlight this year the message of this beautiful film for our students, that every one of us is a complex, dynamic blend of basic emotions. This movie teaches children to recognize feelings as tools that help us to understand ourselves, the world around us, and ultimately make good choices. Here's an example, particularly for those who haven't seen the movie, and if you haven't, I suggest you do. Riley, our protagonist, is faced with the challenge of moving to a new state, leaving behind everything and almost everyone that is familiar to her. This sets off a conflict between the characters, sadness and joy, two of Riley's personified emotions. Sadness struggles to find her place in Riley's consciousness, engaging with memories that bring a sense of melancholy and loss, while joy works hard to distract Riley by diminishing sadness's presence, seeing her as a threat. It's a clever and evocative illustration of our internalized impulse to push away pain, compounded by the loving but often misguided encouragement of others to stay upbeat and positive, even in troubling circumstances. As the story unfolds, Riley learns that sadness serves a crucial role in her life, allowing us to process grief, connect with others and form resilience, and to grow in empathy. The movie reveals the irony that acknowledging and embracing the presence of sadness often leads to greater joy. The two characters come to realize they are not adversaries, but rather they are partners. Riley also discovers the powers and the pitfalls of fear. Wanting to escape the pain of loneliness, Riley decides to run away. But the character of fear intervenes as a voice of reason, raising questions of where she would go, how would she remain safe, and leading her to consider the consequences of that impulsive action. Ultimately, fear's intervention leads her to return home and to confront her feelings with the support and love of her family. Riley also learns that sometimes fear overreacts. When Riley's teacher announces that each student must give a presentation in front of the class, fear exaggerates the risks, consuming Riley with anxiety and self-doubt. Fear's irrational catastrophizing leads Riley to lose confidence in her ability to handle the situation, hindering her performance and causing unnecessary distress. As my very wise daughter often reminds me, fear is a feeling, not fact. Ultimately, Riley learns to recognize when fear's catastrophizing is irrational and takes steps to challenge his influence, reframing the situation in a more balanced way. She regains control of her emotions and approaches scary situations with greater confidence and resilience. I have found this to be a helpful framework in these past months in discerning when to heed fear and when to quiet it. Clearly, this animated G-rated film is not just speaking to children. How many of us deny our emotions, judge ourselves and others for their feelings? And how often do we find ourselves controlled by emotions left unchecked? Are we appropriately alert to how outside influences manipulate us, inflaming our fear, denying our sadness, merchandising our joy? By embodying this message at our holiday celebration, our religious school team caused me to note that Purim's ancient tale provides a similar message, also using oversimplified characters and situations to help teach us to navigate the complexity of our inner and outer worlds. In the book of Esther, cartoonish figures play out a comical drama. Each of these characters represents aspects of ourselves. They are not just exaggerated personalities in a satirical tale, they are archetypes of the human condition. Let's quickly review the cast of leading characters. Esther, the brave hero; Mordecai, the wise advisor; King Ahasuerus, the clueless ruler; and Haman, the arrogant villain. None of us are just one of these characters, each one of them larger than life, but we can recognize aspects of each of them in every one of us. Each of us has the capacity, and especially those of us who are adults, the experience of acting with Esther's courage. Now, can we see ourselves doing exactly what she did? Putting her life at risk, at the mercy of a powerful ruler? Probably not, nor will we have to. There aren't too many Alexei Navalny's in the world. But surely we can reflect on moments when we have taken a courageous action despite feeling vulnerable. Maybe seeking an apology from someone, maybe pushing past our comfort zone and doing something that is brave. Mordecai always seems to know exactly what is happening and what to do. In recent months, that superpower seems particularly imaginative. But while we might not have the answers to global conflicts, we sometimes share insights that provide clarity and guidance, making a meaningful difference in someone's life. We can offer a word of comfort, a framing thought, and for a few people that can make an enormous difference. King Ahasuerus' tendency to be easily duped feels particularly present to me these days. Technology is designed to influence us in ways that benefit others, and often we don't recognize that it's even happening. we would all do well to arm ourselves with the discernment that the king lacked. And then there is Haman. He tastes power and he wants more and more and more. We are very quick to label Haman as an extreme other, as a character we could never inhabit. But truly, everyone is vulnerable to a tide of rising greed and callousness. I recently met with a former bar mitzvah student, now in his early 30s. He told me that he had been energized by ambition since 5th grade. Every class he took, his summer activities, the schools he attended, the friends he made, the mentors he chose, every decision was in service to achieving status and wealth. Only when he began dating with an eye to marriage did this young man realize how he needed to put his ambition in check. He had the perception, the self-reflection, to realize that he had made some decisions that hurt himself and that hurt others, that he had manipulated people and exploited relationships. Though he reached career goals and societal markers of success, he wasn't feeling good about himself, and he was concerned that if he didn't make a change, that it would lead him to a place he didn't want to be. He was even questioning if he wanted what he had worked so hard to attain. Maybe it's obvious that none of us are any one of these Purim exaggerated characters. But I do think it's less obvious that we carry aspects of all of them, and that can be an informing guide for us. What I do see and fear is that more and more we are categorizing each other in these oversimplified ways. We are losing sight of complexity. Last Sunday, the Jewish movie producer Jonathan Glazer won an Oscar for The Zone of Evil, an extraordinarily powerful film set in Auschwitz about the capacity for human depravity. Basically, how step by step one might become like Hitler, like Haman. I am horrified by Jews accusing this man of being a self-hating Jew who desecrated the memory of Holocaust victims and who are calling for a boycott of this important work. All in response to a brief and unclear statement in his acceptance speech where he attempted to encourage us to carry the message of this film to the dangers of dehumanization today. Now, it's legitimate and healthy to debate the meaning of his words and their application, but it is absurd and dangerous to categorize him as an enemy of the Jews, as an enemy of humanity. How dare we? I was equally horrified by the literary magazine Guernica retracting an essay by Israeli Jew and peace activist Joanna Chen. They did this in response to outcries by myopic critics accusing her words of furthering colonialism and genocide. Personally, I found her piece deeply moving and inspirational. You can still find it online, and I encourage you to read it if you haven't. Now, I would be open to learning how others find it problematic, and I would fight for their right to express that. But it should happen in a published response, not by erasing her words and defaming her in this overly exaggerated, in this false way. Inside Out is a very good example of how we start with the basics to teach children about the world's complexity, about humanity's complexity, about every individual's complexity. We use simple language and imagery as building blocks so that they can start to understand and grapple life with depth and with nuance. I am astounded, I am frightened at the growing number of intelligent, mature, educated, and experienced adults responding to our own emotions by oversimplifying complex truths and multifaceted situations. Purim is a time to allow ourselves the ease and escape of embodying two-dimensional characters in a farcical, over-dramatized tale. It's fun and it's silly, but that is not for us to do all the other days of the year. In fact, by doing it once a year, it helps remind us that none of us are any one of these archetypes, not for more than a brief moment. That we are a marvelous, intricate blend of humanity. That we carry all of these aspects laid out in the book of Esther, laid out in the movie, always. God created us with tools of emotion and character, impulse and ability. It's up to us to develop into the people our tradition calls us to be, to see others with the complexity with which we want to be judged, so that we can create a better world for ourselves, for the generations to follow, and so we can be the models that our children learn from. Ken Yehi Ratzon. May this be God's will, and may it be our mission. Amen.